Are we ready for this extra special treat we got? Yeah. I said, are we ready for this extra?
Hey guys! Hey. Good seeing you.
Yeah.
Summer.
Yes, sir.
Good seeing you.
Great to see you again. Thank you. Yeah. Thank you so much for taking time out of your day away from your table to be here with us.
That's why I come.
It's a very special treat. It wasn't scheduled. Really appreciate it.
Oh, no problem.
And they're all very excited.
I'm here. It's the first time I've been in Phoenix for a show in like 16 years.
Really?
Yeah, I came to a show. There's a promoter on the East Coast. He thought it was a great idea to have a show in Phoenix, like in 2004, I think. And he put it up in like the Scottsdale area, in a really like a 5-star resort, and nobody came. And so we all sat up there and sat in the pool, and the few fans that came, we had dinner and had drinks and chatted, and it was great for the folks that were there. But anyway, that was the last time I came, so it's just a little bit different this time.
And you don't do panels very often, so this is a very special treat, at least not with Days of the Dead. You're here a lot. But last time I hosted you was like 2 or 3 years ago, and I do them all. So this is very exciting.
Yeah.
So can we start off by talking about your Creeper audition?
Oh, sure.
I would love to know.
Yeah.
I would love to know about the beginning and the middle and then the end.
Well, the beginning, it was weird. I was, an actor out in Hollywood, just dying to do a job, And I got a call one day from my agent. They said, we have an audition for you, and it's a Francis Ford Coppola movie. I was like, this has got to be one of my friends fucking with me. And I was like, yeah, okay, you have me, Francis Ford Coppola. And I was like, send the script over. Usually when you audition, they give you a couple scenes from the script, and you come in and you read them. You guys have probably seen this. I said, send the scenes over, and they're like, well, you don't have any lines. I said, well, what do they want me to do in the audition? He said, well, they're going to send a little description of the character over, very ominous. And so they sent, like 3 sentences over, and it said, the Creeper is, the title character of the film. He's we know he's probably several thousand years old. We know he eats people, and that's it. And I said, well, what do they want you to do? They're like, they want you to create the character and just come in and show them your take on who this guy is. And it was pretty cool because I had like 2 weeks, which is very unusual to have that long to prepare an audition. It was a good thing though, because it was fun. I was like, okay. I thought about him, and I looked at it really like any other audition. What's the character want? How does he spend his days? What turns him on? So, all those questions, right? I mean, to make him a 3-dimensional character, and I thought, okay, this behavior is everything. You can't talk no lines, right? So you have to communicate through behavior. It's so cool because, as an actor, a lot of times you rely on the dialogue too much. But you're always saying something, even when you're not saying something. Or at least you don't realize you are. So it was really cool exploration to think about behavior and the behavior telling the story. And I looked at this character as like a super predator. I thought, okay, I'm going to go into the animal kingdom and I'm going to find all the best predators. I'm going to build kind of a patchwork quilt of characteristics from all these super predators. And so that's kind of where I started. And I started thinking about, I really enjoyed the idea of blurring the lines between like human characteristics and demon characteristics. And so anyway, long story short, for whatever reason, the character started to make sense to me. Very odd. My mom was very worried at this point. And I thought I had the character the night before the audition. But something was bothering me. I said, my God, I think I have it, but not all the way. It felt like 90%, maybe even 95% there, not all the way there. I just couldn't figure it out. I literally woke up the night before the audition. And I looked like this, longer hair, probably spent too much time on the beach. And I woke up in the middle of the night and said, I gotta shave my head. Because I didn't look as intimidating as I wanted to look, right? So I ran down the hall with my roommate after 3 o'clock in the morning. I was like, Doug, you gotta shave my head. And he was like, oh, you're fucking crazy. And he's standing there in my bathroom. We shaved my head at 3 o'clock in the morning. And I woke up the next morning, and if you've never been bald, it's really cool. See, brother. It's really cool to watch your hair fall off. It's like a really kind of naked, intense feeling. And so the first time I looked at myself in the mirror, I was like, shoo, boom. Just felt like the last tumbler just kind of clicked into place. And the next morning I woke up and called my agent and said, I'm thinking about shaving my head. She's like, don't do it, are you crazy? I'll get the role, what am I going to do with a bald guy for the next 3 months, I was like, well, some things you gotta follow your gut,
You said this after the fact.
I was standing there on the phone bald, So, and then the thing you don't realize after you shave your head is that, now you've got a white cap, because your skin is skin tone, right? And then you've got this area that's had hair on it. So now I have this other problem. Yeah. So the audition was like at noon. It was like 9 o'clock. I was like, what am I going to do with this? And I called one of my buddies. He said, go down there. There's this makeup shop in Beverly Hills and see if they'll blend your head for you. So I hauled ass over to this makeup shop, and I went in there. I was like, you're never going to believe this. And I told them the story, and it's like, it's Beverly Hills. It's Hollywood. So they're like, okay, sit down. And they blended my head, and then I was on my way. I'm telling you the extended version, if that's okay.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. And then I was on my way to the audition. I remember calling an actor friend of mine, like a mentor, a really character, and he said, look, whatever instinct you have, don't second guess it, not even for a millisecond. Because if you doubt or begin to evaluate or think, should I do this? The moment's gone. Right? Just whatever instinct you have. And so I got to the audition, and tons of guys out in the waiting room, typical audition kind of scene, and I'm sitting out there, and they call me in, and this audition was interesting because everybody was in the room, and usually you audition for 1 or 2 people, and if you make that, then you go to the next round. If you make that, you go to the next round. They've been trying to audition for this part for a while, and so they were getting close to the movie, so they were worried, and so everybody was full. And there's a little X on the carpet, like go stand on the X, Went and stood on the X, and everybody's, eating lunch and looking and, talking about the next guy that left or whatever. Nobody's paying attention to me, and I'm just went up and stood on the X. Then the director, Victor, looked up, looked down at my picture.
The picture with hair.
Like the picture of hair, and he said, you don't have any hair. I said, well, sir, this character wouldn't have hair, so I shaved it. And again, I just kind of felt the energy in the room, just kind of go, and everybody just went, and I was like, no, now it's just, I just had to squeeze at that point, And they said, okay, and they turned the camera on. I said, wait a minute. So I'm going to leave the room. So I left the room. I wanted to come in the room as the character.
Now that I have your attention, right?
Yeah. And so I started sniffing in the hall. First thing they ever saw my audition was they heard me sniffing in the hall. And then I came in, and I went right after the casting director. And a little backstory, the first thing they tell you when you're a young actor in Hollywood is don't ever threaten the casting director for real, right? You never spoke. Here's the personal space around the casting director. Don't ever make them feel uncomfortable or anything like that. Well, again, follow your instinct, right? So I went after his ass. I chased him around the room. I threw him up against the wall. I broke all the rules, and and then they were like, okay. And the director Victor was like, well, come sit down. You know, and I went and sat down across from him. And he said, so we're thinking of shooting in Florida in August. He said, are you busy that month? And I remember thinking, what is he talking about? Because I was like, you know, and he was basically giving me the role on the spot. And then, and I really don't remember much of it, but if you're curious, they taped my original audition. Maybe some of you have seen it, and it's on YouTube. So if you Google Jonathan Breck audition, it's my original audition that they posted on YouTube now, and you can see it from the very first time I walked in the room. That's the very first time, everything. The very first time I met him, they actually put it up so you can actually watch it. And then, of course, I had to go back and audition like 3-4 more times to get the role. But it was really an interesting experience because it was all just instinct. It was all just follow, trusting my gut, and follow an instinct, and a life lesson. Because, you know, you go out there and you think, what do they want? And when you forget about what they want, and when you trust your own instincts, that's when you're on the road to something, I think. So it was a big learning experience for me. Because I mean, particularly with roles, they think they know what they want, but when you walk in the room as the character, that's what they want. You know, so you can't really please anybody. You kind of have to do what's in your gut to do. And it was a blast, and then it just went on from there. So,
going forward on set, are you like a method monster? Do you stay away from the people, or are you like hanging out, or are you trying to scare them behind the scenes just for the funsies of it? Well, how does that work for you?
Actually, a little bit of all everything
Yeah.
that you said right there. So I came up with this harebrained idea that I shouldn't be around the kids for the first movie, Jesse and Gina. So I told Victor, I called him up one day. I said, look, I think it'd be a good idea if they didn't know who was behind the mask. Because I don't want them, God forbid, they like me.
Yeah.
Right? It's going to change everything. And I didn't want to like them. So I was like, let's just stay apart. So they kept me sequestered for 3 months. And it turned out being pretty much from everybody. So it was kind of rough. But I think it added to the performance. But so for the first movie, I stayed away from everybody. And then for the second movie, I had a whole host of annoying teenage kids. And so that's when I scared the shit out of them. I just had so much fun. Going around the set, hiding in the bathroom stall, waiting for them to come in, character hopping over the bathroom stall. And so I did a little bit of that. And then for the third movie, everybody knew who I was, so I was just kind of hanging out on the set, you know, costume.
The second one had such a great cast of young actors and a few veterans as well.
Yeah.
Amazing performers.
Yeah.
Like I love Nikki Acox so much, you know.
Nikki, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nikki Acox.
She passed away. Did you know that?
No, I didn't. When did that happen?
2 years ago. Leukemia. Yeah.
Goodness. Yeah. Wow.
She was great in that movie.
She was great in everything. I mean, from other things she's done before that and after, she was amazing. Wow.
God bless her, man.
Right. And all the other teenagers too. The bus driver. Hilarious.
Yeah.
Hilarious.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So,
great casting.
What was it like working with a bunch of incredibly talented young people?
It was so much fun.
And scary.
Because a lot of those kids, it was like their first movies. They were like, you know, it was, and we shot. So it's crazy what they can do in Hollywood. So even though it was out on the road, that bus was in a huge airplane hangar. They converted the airplane hangar in Long Beach where they made the big B-17 bomber for World War II. It's a giant airplane hangar, so it's probably 75 yards tall and probably 300 yards long. And they'd start building one of those B-17s at the end, and when it came out the other end, it would be a fully assembled B-17 bomber. That's how big this thing was. So they remade the road, and we shot it all in this massive hangar in Long Beach. So we were all in there for 3 months, and so it was fun. Yeah, got to terrorize the kids. They deserved it. Let's be honest, it kind of deserved it a little bit. So yeah.
We have a hotel full of kids that age. So I'm like, I'm feeling it.
Oh, yeah, we do. Volleyball kids, yeah. Maybe I'll come out as a creeper tonight.
Yeah.
You guys like that? Yeah. Some don't look like they smell too good though, so I don't know.
I don't know, it depends on what you're into.
Well, creepers into some funky stuff, so you might find one or two. So, yeah.
And last question before I turn it out to the audience. You know, the creeper is such a physical character. What's your process in like really developing that? Did it all happen for you beforehand? When you were thinking the audition, did it happen when you were in costume? A little bit of everything?
No, it's a great question. No, it really all informs. You know, Brian Pinnakus, makeup design, I mean, wardrobe, everything kind of informs the movement. And I really thought, movement obviously was so important with this character. I thought, since he's probably several thousand years old, he's been around for generations, so I really wanted to incorporate some of the movement of different eras in with the character too. So it's like, I don't know if you notice, pay attention next time if you don't, but the cape that the creeper wears in the first film. So if he's been around for forever, back in the 1600s, they're wearing capes, even earlier than that. There's a definite way that they would move with their cape because they're long, right? And billowing, and so if you take a corner too quick, you know, so they used to work their capes with their arms and with their hands. And so little things like that I found. So when the creeper's on the road, staring the kids down in the car in the first movie, and he's pacing back and forth. If you'll watch, you know, I'm working my cape, and so I found moments like that where I could incorporate different movements that felt like might come from different generations, and then instinct kind of took over from there.
Did you have any preconceived notions of what you thought you wanted to do, and then once you got into your costume, you're like, well, that's not going to work?
You know, it was really instinct. I mean, it was very difficult for the first movie because they wanted me to be blind in the extra close-up scenes. And so that meant I had to wear contacts that made me completely blind. They wanted, what I meant to say is they wanted my eyes to look like a cataract, like an old dog, right? So they had to make these custom contacts, and when they popped them in, I couldn't see anything. It's like putting a white shopping bag, like a plastic shopping bag over your head. You could see a hand when it got this close to you, but other than that, I couldn't see anything, so I had to memorize everything. And then they would pop the contacts in and do everything from memory.
Wow.
So, but going back to your question, it's physicality of it. You know, when you get to go back and do a character again, it's such a gift because you prepared for the character the first time. So now you have that foundation, and you just get to explore, you get to go deeper. But after a while, I just knew what to do. It was really bizarre. It's like Victor would be like, Victor would ask me, what would you do in this? And I just knew. The character just made sense to me. So it's fun when it gets like that, you know, because then you're just having fun. You're not thinking, you're just
Sounds like you are a
acting
creeper.
as the character. You know?
It's been a rough meeting. Do we have any audience questions? Yes.
How does it feel to start the streak of horrifyingly mutilating Justin Long in horror movies?
Oh, very gratifying, you know.
It's all because of you, sir.
Yeah. Well, Justin, man, that guy, I loved working with him. That was one of the first films. He'd done Galaxy Quest. That was really the only film he'd done before Jeepers Creepers. So he was getting his start. I loved working with him. We never got to know each other. We just met each other literally when we were filming on set. But I thought he was hugely talented when I watched him work. So there was no question that he would have a career, have a big career. You know, I'm glad I took him out. So, yeah. Yes, sir.
Before this role, did you have any inspiration from from some of the early film era greats like Lon Chaney. And can you tell us a little bit about some of those classic greats and what about them inspired you?
Well, it's a great question, and my answer will probably surprise you a little bit. I was never the biggest horror fan growing up.
Yeah.
And I remember being a little self-conscious about that after I made the first movie, because I knew that people would ask me this question. I knew reporters would ask me this question. What were your inspirations and all that? And then I realized it probably served me, because I didn't have any preconceived ideas about what anybody had done before. Or if I did, I didn't realize I did. And so I really it helped me approach the character fresh. And now I've since become a huge fan, right? Of all those horror actor greats. But at the time, I wasn't thinking of anybody else's performance when I did it. So I think it ended up kind of serving me in the end.
Oh, yeah. So you were really trusting your gut, the inspiration that you did got, it sounds like it was apex predators.
Exactly.
In nature.
Well, exactly. And then just the movement of the character, just how he communicated. It's like I said, it's just, well, you think about this character, okay, he's underground somewhere for 23 years, and he gets to come out for only 23 days. You just think about that. Really think about that for a minute. And all you've got are the bodies of your victims around you for 23 years. Now, what do? You got, where's your sex? Where's your art? Where's everything? And it just informs everything. It informed everything about the character, about his behavior. Like when he smells, there's something sensual about the way he smells, because he's getting a lot from that. He's not just getting something to eat. I mean, he's really getting a lot of his needs, met here. So I just thought was having exactly. So I thought, so all that really, and there's a level of respect there, right? Because he doesn't just toss bodies in his lair. No, he preserves them. Right? He's a craftsman. He loves them. Right? So there's a reverence there. So all that kind of stuff really informs the way you approach your prey and your behavior. And so it was so much fun working on a character where behavior was that big a part of the performance. Because again, all too often we just rely on. I mean, I've done 36 movies, and these were the only 3 where I never had any lines. But they're my favorites because it's not all about the lines. It's all about the unspoken word and how you communicate without verbal language. And I thought it was so much fun to. What scares me is the recognition of something but not understanding it. If that makes any sense. So, it was important to me that I said before there be some humanistic characteristics that we recognize, but not really. Just enough to where it disturbs us. We're like, oh, wait a minute. I think this is familiar, but I'm not sure. So straddling that line was so fun for me to bring human characteristics and then turn it on its head a little bit. So I love the opportunity to play with behavior like that, communicate that way. So.
Thank you. That was one of the most unsettling monster creations
thank you very much.
that I ever saw in film. And,
Thank you.
And I'm glad that you made it the way you did, because that was pure genius.
Thank you. And the humor, came from, we just happened on that. Talking about stuff that you find. It really wasn't written in the script, in the first script, but just happy accidents happen. Like, you guys remember the first movie where I'm throwing the bodies in the back of the truck, and I forget the head. Close the doors, and I forget the head, and then one door opens up, and head goes in. That was just frustration. I was pissed, and it was late at night. Victor was setting up the scene. He goes, okay. He said, so you're throwing bodies in the back of the truck. You open the doors up, boom. Throwing bodies in the back of the truck. Then you throw your axe in. Then you take your hat from behind your back, and you put it on your head. Then you close the doors, and I'm counting all these moves up. And I'm going, it's like 8 hands to do that. You really think about it. So I was game, though. I was going to give it a shot. So after about the 4th take, I had had the axe under my arm, I had the hat behind me, I was juggling all this shit, I was throwing bodies in there. And after about the 4th take, I got it all in there, or so I thought, and I looked down, the head was at my feet. And like I said, we've been shooting for hours, and I was so pissed. I just picked up that head, and I opened one door, and I just flung it in there, and I slammed the door just out of disgust, And everybody started cracking up. All the crew started cracking up. Victor started cracking up, and so we found stuff that way. And then and when it worked, we just kept going deeper. We kept leaning into it more. And so then, the Creeper in the second movie, now you're seeing his kind of wicked sense of humor come out. Just kept playing that card. But that's when it really gets fun. You get a bunch of folks together and you start creating something, and you find things, and you just pull a thread and keep going, following, wherever it goes. Anyway, an addendum to your question.
Yeah. And I saw that someone back over here. I didn't. There we go.
Any plans for another one?
God, I wish. I really do. But I'm not really. Who knows, right? Never say never. But originally, the idea around these movies the idea around the first movie was it was a small little indie film. We didn't think, much was going to amount to it. We just did it because we loved doing it. And then it became a huge success. And then we made the second movie, and MGM got involved in the second movie, and we made a bundle of money on the second movie. And I never forget, the president of MGM called me, and he said, I hope you're not doing anything for the next 10 years. Because we're going to make as many of these as we can. And then you're thinking, typical, right? You're thinking, well, shit, here we go, right? And it just didn't pan out that way. Victor, at the time, he wanted to go do some other types of movies. He didn't want to roll right into another Creeper movie, I understand. Of course, we know now, when you have something hot in Hollywood, you better put your foot on the gas, right? Fame is fleeting. But he wanted to go away and do some other pictures, and he did that for 4 years, and then he was like, I want to make another Creeper movie. And he came back around and approached MGM, and they were going into bankruptcy at the time. And they had bought the third script. He'd written the third script. And they bought it, and it got frozen with everything else in bankruptcy for 2 years. And so now it pushed us out to like 2009, 2010, and it's a different story. And so we just kind of missed our window. But the plan was always, Victor wrote the second film and then subsequent films. He's written several. With the idea of piecing out a little bit more about who the character was, about where he came from, about what he could do. Each subsequent movie, you'd learn a little bit more about him. And that way we would stay ahead of the audience, and we would tease that out. And so we've got storylines. We could have made 10 of these things. But it didn't happen. And now with Victor's very public trials, basically, after the third movie, I think it's going to be hard to move forward without him. And he's the creative engine behind this. He's the writer, director. He's the force behind this. So, and as you saw in the fourth movie, it's somebody else just can't pick up the mantle and go. So I would love it if we could do another one, but we'll see. We'll see.
With what you just said about pieces of it coming out for the movie, were you ever given the full background of the character? Where he came from, how he exists?
I wouldn't say I was given the full background, but when I started, Victor gave me a book that was his inspiration for the character. It was a short story, and it kind of came from that book. It wasn't a fully fleshed out character, but it was it was the beginnings of where he came from, and we were gonna eventually get back to that. But yeah. And it's not, and by the way, the comic book guys had it wrong. I don't know if you guys have read the comic book, but the guy who wrote the backstory. There's a comic book series that came out, Creeper comic book series that came out, and he was a totally different writer, and he came up with his own backstory, and that's his own. He went off the reservation for that. So. Yeah.
Yes. Was there any talk about Jeepers Creepers going against another icon person?
Oh.
Like Creeper versus Freddy and stuff.
Exactly.
Man, I'd love it. You know, first of all, I think Freddie'd be in trouble. But no, I mean, I haven't heard anything about that yet. No.
How was the process in regards to the makeup? How long did it take? How taxing was it on your body during filming and things of that nature? Was it pretty hot on the set in the first movie or the second movie?
Well, the first movie we shot in Florida in August. It's like they could not have picked a worse place or a worse time. And I think originally, now that I think about it, we were supposed to shoot earlier in the year. We were supposed to shoot in the spring, and then as movies, this happens with movies, they delayed. So naturally, it was August. And we got there and said, "Don't worry, we're going to get you a cool suit." I never saw that yet. And the makeup was anywhere from 5 to 7 hours, so it was pretty intense. And I mean, nothing can prepare you for 7 hours in the makeup chair. Although my first job was a Star Trek Voyager, and I did 4 hours in the makeup chair for that. This was next level. But it's really interesting. After a while, you kind of got to give over to it because you're going to be there anyway. And the makeup for Jeepers Creepers was so detailed. Brian Pinnacus is the guy who did it. Every eye was like 5 individual pieces, all like literally razor thin. And because they molded them off my skin, because they wanted, the creeper's skin to look like real skin. They wanted every movement I made, every twitch in my cheek to register. Not like wearing a mask, right? They wanted to do it the old school way, so it was a build. So they molded everything. So when you look down at the creeper's hands, you'll see Jonathan Breck's veins in the creeper's hands. I mean, it's that detailed. And so each eye was 5 different pieces, like I started to tell you, and they would put one piece on, they'd glue it down, they'd layer it, they'd blend it with the other one, they'd go around, and so they'd build all this up, and they'd paint it, and they'd airbrush it, and you'd watch yourself in the mirror. It was interactive makeup, so I couldn't sleep or anything like that. I had to help them put it on. So I'm sitting here watching myself. It's interesting, watch yourself disappear layer by layer. And so I started using it just as a meditation to just kind of, as I saw myself disappear and the creeper appear, by the time they finished with me, I was ready to shoot. I was ready to go. I was pissed. So it was perfect, after 7 hours, you stand up and get the fuck out of my way. Ready to go, So somehow I just made my peace with it, and I did okay. I had a couple days where the world kind of closed in on me. That one scene in the first movie where I'm in the jail cell eating that inmate. I don't know if you guys remember that scene. Well, they had all the lights on me, all the big spotlights on me, and they're hot, And I was in there for hours, and the actor they got was an amputee. And it was missing his arm because they wanted him to look like I ate his arm. And I think they grabbed some homeless guy off the street. I don't know, man, because it was, the smell was so intense. It was hot, and I went out. I passed out in that scene. But that was really the only time it really got me. The rest of the time I was okay. It's that kind of makeup though. It's so uncomfortable. You can't read, you can't watch TV. There's nothing you can do except for wait around and get ready to go, which in the end kind of fed my character. But and then after you work for 12 hours, after 7 hours in the chair, then you got to get it off. It takes like an hour and a half, 2 hours to get it off, and that's the worst part because everybody's going home, and you're sitting there after 20 hours, was saying, get this shit off me, you know.
How
So
long did it
they-
take to remove it all?
An hour and a half, probably,
Okay.
an hour and a half, 2 hours. There's a few days where I was just like, I'm done, just rip it off.
Anyone else in this section? Anyone else in this section? All right, I can continue on. All right.
Yes, continue on, please.
Okay then. So on my podcast, The Dolls of Horror, we have a segment. Prop we would like to own from each movie we cover. Was there any props you wanted to own from any of your Jeepers movies, or did you take anything?
Oh,
Were you
no.
given anything?
No,
Did you
I
want
didn't take
anything?
anything. No, yeah, I got some throwing stars. I got one of the axes. I didn't get to take any wardrobe, which sucked because I really wanted that. And you know, I don't think I really knew. And after the first movie, I was really young and dumb, and I didn't know to take anything, and I didn't know it would. Honestly, didn't know it would become. How could you even know? You know. So I didn't know any better.
So you're not a memorabilia type person in any way?
Not typically.
Yeah.
I mean, but I've got 3 of the throwing stars, which they gave me, and my wife had a big shadow box made with 3 throwing stars in it, which is really cool. So
That's very
that
cool.
means a lot to me. And I've got a dagger, and as I mentioned, I've got an axe. But I don't have any wardrobe. I know. So I'd like to have that, but yeah, that's it. So yeah.
Okay, so I'm about to wrap it up. This is the final call for questions. All right. Okay, so
I enjoyed it. It's good to see you again.
you two, one last question.
Yes, ma'am.
If you could give your character one piece of advice, what would it be?
If I could give my character one piece of advice, what would it be? Hang in there, buddy. We're going to get around to another movie event. You'll be able to come out and get Farmer Taggart eventually.
Thank you.